So I wake up yesterday morning thinking about meal prepping, recipes, and what video I should make for the week when I step outside to find winter's came. Early, actually, the day after Halloween, which is pretty rare around here. But it made my decision for me. Today I'm making my favorite comfort food for the wintertime, my homemade veggie beef soup. It's a recipe I learned from my dad. It works great for lunches, dinners, and you make a big enough batch of it, it lasts you all week long, sometimes even longer. So let's get started. Welcome back to Former Fat Guy Fitness. I'm Tyler, your former fat guy, and as always, let's start by going over the ingredients we'll need. What you're gonna need is 1,800 grams or 64 ounces of beef broth, 829 grams or 29 ounces of crushed or diced tomatoes, 340 grams of carrots, 170 grams of celery, 75 grams of onions, 667 grams of potatoes, I'm using russets, and then 907 grams or 32 ounces of a top round roast. Outside of the ingredients, you're only going to need some basic equipment. You're just going to need a cutting board and a knife, obviously, to cut everything up. You'll need a pan to sear your meat up in, and then you're going to want what I like to call a big-ass pot to put everything in and watch it boil. You'll also notice that I've got the blender out here. You don't need a blender necessarily, but I didn't have crushed tomatoes. I only have diced tomatoes on hand, so I'm going to take the diced tomatoes, pop them in the blender, and blend them up for 5 seconds real quick. That'll turn them into crushed tomatoes. And as always, get yourself a food scale, measure out your ingredients. If you're trying to lose weight, keep a food scale on hand. And as always, if you need any of the stuff here, I have links in the description down below. It helps the channel if you check it out, along with the full recipe. With all that out of the way, we're gonna start with the celery and the onions. The first thing you do is you cut up your celery and onions extremely small. You're not looking for big chunks of celery, you're not looking for big chunks of onion. These basically just act as a flavoring for the broth. These are gonna go in first. Once you get all those cut up and put in a bowl, move on to your carrots. Start by peeling and washing your carrots, but then the trick with the carrots is going to be the same as the potatoes. You're going to cut off the small tips and get rid of those. You're looking for about 1/2-inch chunks of carrots. You want them all to be the same size though, so everything cooks evenly. Once you got your carrots cut up, you're going to move on to your potatoes. Much like the carrots, start by peeling and washing them. And there is a trick with the potatoes as well. Turn them into a box. You turn them into a box by just cutting off the edges of the sides and cutting off the edges of the top and the bottom. Once your potato's a box, it's much easier to dice it into cubes. Just like the carrots, shoot for about 1/2-inch cubes. You do this because if you have some pieces that are bigger, those will end up hard and rocky. If you have pieces that are smaller, those will just end up mushy and gushy. Once you have everything all cut up though, we're gonna start by putting all of our liquid ingredients into the pot. So let's do that real quick. Once the veggies and potatoes are done, out of the way, and all prepped to go, you can move on to your big ass pot. This is where you take your beef broth, put it in the pot, take your crushed tomatoes, put it in the pot, and then you take that onion and celery mixture that we just cut up and made, and you put it in the pot. After that, you season it. I'm gonna be using black pepper, salt, onion powder, basil, and rosemary, but you can genuinely use whatever seasonings you want. It's just kind of down to your taste, but always start with less seasoning and taste as you go. You can always add more seasoning in, you can't take any seasoning out. So once all that's in the pot, I'm gonna turn it to medium-high heat, and I'm gonna let it boil for about 30 to 45 minutes. The times on this recipe doesn't have to be exact. We're really just trying to slow cook it and let all those flavors meld together. So I'm gonna put all that in the pot, let it boil for 30 to 45 minutes, and then we'll come back and we'll add the carrots in. Okay, so I've let the broth, the tomatoes, the onions, and the celery cook for about 45 minutes to let everything get slow cooked into that broth. Now we're gonna come back and put the carrots in for 45 minutes. While the carrots are going for 45 minutes, you can get your beef prepped. I'm gonna start by getting all the fat trimmed off of the beef, then cut it into 1/2-inch cubes, about the same size as the potato and carrots. You want everything to be the same size in the soup. And once you get all that cut up, I'm gonna season it with some black pepper, some salt, some garlic, and some onion, but again, season it with whatever you'd like. Then throw it in your pan that's already been preheated to a high heat. You wanna sear up your meat to get color on all the sides. It doesn't have to get cooked all the way through because it's gonna be going in the soup to get cooked again. But anyway, do your carrots for 45 minutes, prep your beef, and get it seared up. Then we'll come back and do the final step. All right, 45 minutes later, with finished meat and potatoes ready to go, the carrots have gone long enough by themselves. It's time for the last step. Throw in the meat. Don't drain any of the liquid out. That's actually good fat that we've already accounted for in the macros with the top round roast. You need to have fat in your diet. It's already accounted for in your macros, so keep it in there. Just gonna add awesome flavor to your soup. Take your meat and potatoes, put it in, And if you haven't guessed, it's gonna go for 45 more minutes. I'm gonna do that real quick, let it do its thing for 45 minutes. Keep it on a lower heat, you wanna keep that liquid, but then we'll come back, get it bowled up, and go over the macros. Final tip for this recipe, if you let it go for about an hour to an hour and a half on the third cycle and you lost too much liquid, just add a little bit of water to it, stir it up, thin it out to where you like it. If you want it to be thicker like a stew, like I normally do, just let it keep boiling, boil some of the water off of it. Wherever it is that you like it, get it to that point. Once you do, enjoy. For the macros for the entire batch, you got 2,186 calories. For carbs, you got 221.8 grams. 27.5 grams of fat, and 250.4 grams of protein. For a small bowl like this at 480 grams, you got 370 calories, 37.7 grams of carbs, 4.7 grams of fat, and 42.5 grams of protein. So when the snow hits and you're needing some good comfort food in the wintertime, but you need to hit your macros still, this bowl is perfect. It's that 10-to-1 rule like I normally follow, where you got plenty of protein, low on calories, it keeps you full, it keeps you happy. If you try this recipe and you like it, hit the like button down below. If you have any other recipes you want to see made high protein, let me know in the comments. If you want to help the channel out or see more recipes or other advice coming from me down the road, hit the subscribe button. But in the meantime, it's time for dinner. Thanks for watching.